The answer is yes. So really the main things you have to swap out is the turbo, or not swap out, but use off the old engine. The turbo, make sure you have a good turbo. The intake manifold with all the PCV lines that go to it, and there's a ton of them. The exhaust manifold, the pipe that goes to the manifold to the turbo, that needs to be replaced obviously. All the accessories, and then there's a couple little differences. The AVCS solenoids, you need to swap those out. The cam sensors, make sure that they look the same. And then off the JDM motor, I didn't use the exhaust cam sensors or phaser or the AVCS exhaust solenoid. I just left it off. I just used my old harness off the intake manifold, took it all off, put all that stuff on, connected everything, and everything connected right up. The only differences in the engines, in the JDM version, there's a PCV line that goes into the engine and a thick hose. That is different than on the USDM, the American version. So I just used that off the old one, which you should anyways, but mine broke. So I used a bunch of the hoses off the JDM engine manifold to make it work basically, and I haven't had any problems. But yeah, that's pretty much all the stuff you have to take off. There's one plug on the driver's side head that had a coolant fitting on it that I just used the plug from the USDM version, just plugged it, and that's pretty much it. Make sure that you definitely swap those AVCS solenoids because they're different sizes. So I'm assuming that they might have a problem if you don't swap those. And that's pretty much it off the engine. I would advise that when you switch the turbo out, make sure to install the engine with the turbo and the downpipe going to the exhaust manifold put in there. You can put the exhaust manifold in when the engine's installed, but that pipe is kind of a pain to do, as well as the turbo with it in the vehicle. And then that's pretty much it. You just put it in the car, put all the accessories back on. Another thing that I did was I hooked the starter up and then jumpered the starter to run it to get some oil pressure in there, and then I made sure to change the filter, change the oil, put fresh oil in it. And you can kind of listen. A lot of guys say do a compression test with it out of the car. It's really not that hard to do it in the car, but it is harder. I didn't do that because to me, I can install it and put all this stuff on it in about an hour. Swap everything over. It's probably an hour to 2 hours, and then install it as another hour. So if you lose 3 hours and then you crank it over, and you can kind of hear it for compression. When I was cranking this, I could hear it. You could hear the engine building up compression. So I figured it had good compression. Once I finished hooking everything back up, the main harness, all the accessories and the radiator and coolant fans and stuff like that, it started up pretty good. I haven't had any problems or any check engine codes or anything like that. I just made sure to clear the codes out before I started it. I didn't even have any codes set when I did start it, so that's a good sign. But yeah, if you reuse the old harness and hook everything back up, the US computer is not really going to see any difference of what it's trying to read. Most of the sensors that they install is pretty universal among all their engines. So as long as you're making sure you're reusing the old wiring harness and none of that stuff breaks as you're taking it off, just be careful because you have to use that stuff again. As long as you're double checking that stuff, you'll be fine. So here's the new engine. As you can see, it pretty much looks exactly the same as the EJ255. This is a EJ205 that I got. Pretty much everything is the same. The fuel lines hook up pretty similarly. Heater hoses. That's pretty much it. I mean, wiring harness, exhaust. manifold, and then you have obviously your engine mounts. And then it always helped me whenever I would I take one of the exhaust pipes. It has that bracket with the 14 millimeter in it underneath the engine, that I take out to allow some movability to get the downpipe back onto the turbo. This is a great time when you're doing this job to do the clutch. I put a new clutch in mine. You might also do the timing belt and water pump. On this engine, I inspected that stuff before, and the belt had no cracks in it, and the water pump was dry as a whistle, so I didn't mess with that stuff. Some people would recommend it. You know, I work on cars a lot. I'm not gonna worry about it unless I have to, and I know what to do if something happens. So it saved me time, so I just put it, threw it in the car, and it started right up. That's pretty much it, and I will run it for you just so you can listen to it. You can hear it starts right up. First turn, no codes, no check engine light. I'll give it a couple quick pulls just so you guys can listen to it. Got a happy response. And just for further proof, because everyone on the internet is a critic, I got a brake light on, I got a passenger seat belt light on. Let's see if I can get all these off real quick. There goes the brake light. We got a door light. Oh, that's out. And then hold on. Let me get this seatbelt light off real quick. Oh, by the way, there's my fiance in the dash for you. Look at that, no lights. And she's happy. That's what we want. That is what we want.